But we begin tonight with some advice for the Republican Party. To win elections, you got to read the room. You listen to the American people, you pay attention to their priorities, and then those Americans vote based on what they want. It isn't complicated. It's the kind of stuff you learn in the third grade, except, whoops, you don't want third graders reading books anymore. But Republicans simply cannot read the room, choosing instead to occupy a much smaller voting bloc of social conservatives who are hell-bent on policies that are not about the unborn, but rather about undoing 20th century progress. And so today, the 2024 Republican field, minus Donald Trump, addressed evangelical voters at the Family Leadership Summit in Iowa. The event was hosted by fired former Fox host Tucker Carlson, who just days ago sat down to interview accused rapist and human trafficker Andrew Tate for his new show on Elon Twitter. Good times. Here's a sampling of what Republicans and Tucker's furrowed eyebrows pitched to evangelicals in the early voting state today.
America needs positive, powerful, biblically sound leadership to regain the high ground.
How many COVID shots did you take, and how do you feel about it now, in retrospect?
How many COVID shots did you take?
0. January 6th. What was that? Do you think that was an insurrection?
I've never used the word insurrection, Tucker, over the last 2 years, but it was a riot that took place at the Capitol that day.
At the same event, Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds signed her draconian 6-week abortion ban into law.
I convened a special session of Iowa's General Assembly to once again address the most important human rights cause of our time, protecting unborn human lives from the atrocity of abortion. A worthy battle and one I will never concede. I have never been prouder to once again sign a bill into law.
The governor's choice of venue for signing the bill is intentional, of course, playing into the weird right-wing delusion that abortion bans are popular. They're not. Not even in Iowa, where 61% of adults say abortion should be legal in all or most cases. Iowa voters don't want their freedom snatched away. They don't want abortion banned before many people even know that they're pregnant. Bans that shackle rape and incest survivors, many of whom are children, by forcing their tiny little bodies to give birth. No one wants this, except this tiny little evangelical enclave at this hidey hole summit and the trolls who want to control women. Forced birth is an extreme position and extremely unpopular. And yet, Republican leaders are leaning all the way in as they giddily celebrate their violent agenda at Christian prom. Meanwhile, Republicans in Washington are waging a culture war with the military. Today, the House narrowly passed a deeply partisan defense bill that would limit abortion access, transgender care, and diversity training for military personnel. Going all in on culture wars, pushing voter suppression as their only tactic to win elections, rinse and repeat. This is pretty much the Republican platform for 2024. The stuff that they've been doing for years, despite elections, plural, proving that the strategy is a dud. Voting is what forces democracies to listen. And yet, the Gilead Party is refusing to listen. Americans will reject this, of course. It's practically written on the wall in disco neon font. But these guys will not read the room. They're pretending that they're not, or they simply refuse to do it. How else do you win? I mean, how else would you win an election that way? Here's a secret. You won't. Joining me now is Maria Teresa Kumar, President and CEO of Voto Latino, Stuart Stevens, Senior Advisor for the Lincoln Project, and Robert Jones, President of the Public Religion Research Institute and author of the upcoming book, The Hidden Roots of White Supremacy. Thank you all for being here. Robbie, I do want to start with you because the thing I really can't understand, I do want to ask all of you about this, but I want to start with you because you're my numbers guy, is that abortion is not even a close call issue in terms of whether people think it should be legal or illegal. And that includes most American Christians, right? I mean, talk me down on that if I'm wrong. I don't think there is a majority that's bigger than maybe 15% of people who want, for instance, a national abortion ban.
No, Joy, that's exactly right. You're talking about reading the room. They might just want to read some polls, both nationally and in Iowa. So, again, you showed 6 in 10 Iowans support the legality of abortion. It's 2/3 of Americans that support the legality of abortion. If you look at Iowa, and let's just be clear, this is a near total ban on abortion with very few exceptions. If we ask people, even in Iowa, right, we think of this the heartland, only 5% of Iowans support a total ban on abortion. Like, that's how extreme this position is. And even if you look at other Christians, right, other people of faith, white evangelicals are by far the outliers. Only about a quarter of white evangelicals say that abortion should be legal in all or most cases. But most other Christian groups, including African-American Protestants, including Catholics, both Latino and white Catholics, including Jews and other people of faith, actually have majorities supporting abortion. And if you look state by state, there is no state in which more than 14% support a total ban on abortion, 1/4, right? So that's how out of step, this ban is. And it's worth noting, too, just one quick thing, is that white evangelicals are this kind of shrinking outlier group, right? So even in Iowa, they make up only 1 in 5 Iowans. Right. So this is the kind of a minority of the Iowa population. There's far more unaffiliated Iowans, religiously unaffiliated Iowans, 29% compared to only 19% of Iowans who are white evangelical Protestants. So this is an extreme, a group that holds extreme views on abortion, and it's a shrinking and graying portion of the electorate.
Well, Stuart, I didn't major in math, but I can do a little math. That sounds like math that you cannot win an election. You used to run Republican campaigns. Make it make sense to me how appealing to 15% of the population, even in a state like Iowa, can ever get you to win or even be reelected. I don't understand what their math is.
Yeah, it's even worse than just the top line numbers show, because the intensity here, when you ask what is the very favorable and very unfavorable, it has shifted now. So the very unfavorable on these new abortion restrictions is twice and more what the very favorable is. So, there was a time when there was more intensity among the anti-abortion crowd, but they've now achieved a lot of what they wanted, and it's probably a natural sort of human reaction. The intensity's on the other side. It's the same way with guns. Look, the group that they were meeting with today in Iowa, it's a group that has one thing in common. They always endorse someone. Whoever they endorse has never been elected president. So I think they're going to keep this perfect string intact this year. Donald Trump didn't win Iowa last time, and they played Hail to the Chief when he walked into the room come the following January. So it's really this sort of cycle that the Republican Party is in of trying to be more pure. And it's just going to, you saw Tucker Carlson asking the governor of Arkansas if he had a COVID shot. I mean, this is just absurd. 85% of Americans have COVID shots.
Right.
So, if I'm in politics, I'll be with the 85. You can have the other. It's really a non-governing party that is just spinning deeper and deeper into this darkness.
Right. I mean, they'll be pure, but I don't see how they're going to be purely elected. I mean, this is the MTK. Listen. I think people forget Barack Obama won Iowa. Like, Iowa is not a completely unwinnable state for Democrats. It just happens to have this far-right evangelical government right now. But, is it because states like Georgia got away with this? Republicans in Georgia passed almost the same kind of law and got away with it. Texas, they did it and got away with it in the midterms. All of them got reelected. Is it because Democratic voters aren't punishing people? Because even and independent voters are very much against this stuff. Is it because these guys aren't being punished for it by getting voted out that they're doing it?
I think part of it is absolutely they're not getting punished enough, but I also think that we have to look at a lot of these electoral maps, and some of them are very much jam-packing these concentration of voters through gerrymandering, where it becomes harder to compete. You mentioned a state like Texas. Texas, technically in the last census, Joy, they gained basically 4 congressional seats. 3 of them were supposed to be Latino, and 1 of them was supposed to be African-American. That's not how it panned out when you came out with the district maps. And that is one of the places where we have to systemically work on to ensure that there is a real imagination of how do you actually conduct the census, and what does the implication of that census have when it comes to drawing congressional lines. But taking a step back, what the Republicans right now are doing is that they're trying to solidify a base for their primaries. And so they're going as far right as possible. But this idea that they're going to be able to tack into the middle to win the hearts and minds of the majority of Americans doesn't make not only sense, but it's impossible. The only pathways that they have is the highly, disenfranchisement that they're doing at the state level. It's a state like North Carolina and even Georgia and Iowa and Texas that you mentioned. It is that kind of restrictions. When you have all 50 states basically saying, yes, we certified the 2020 election. Yes, it was above board. And then right shortly after, literally the month after, in January, they introduced over 300 pieces of legislation to impact 2024. So you need to have a battle at the courts. You need to reimagine how we do gerrymandering in this country, like get away with that. But at the end of the day, you also need to talk to voters, because we're expecting on the eve of 2024 election over 12 million more young eligible voters than the last go around. And what they really don't believe in are these culture wars.
Yeah.